Hey there, I'm author and attorney Kelly OConnell, practicing attorney in New Mexico with Knockout Radio, increasing knowledge one podcast at a time. I hope you're well. And I decided to do a show on what's happening at the border, and I know it's been in the news a lot and everything, but I heard something on the news that really disturbed me, and I wanted to do a show just based on this idea, which is so crazy, that Biden has a set of rules for people who are coming to the border. And I got a lot of statistics for you, by the way. And hope you're well. Hope you're doing well. And I hope you're adjusting to summer. And don't forget the COVID is supposed to die in the heat. So, although I don't remember it happening last year, but the fact that I heard, which just caused my jaw to drop, of all the people that are coming across the border that are caught, the only ones that are sent back, get this, the only ones that are sent back to Mexico are the ones that have been either convicted of murder or rape. I was absolutely astounded when I heard that. And think about all of the terrible crimes that a person can commit. And also there are people that are convicted or prosecuted or accused of rape and murder, but they're not convicted, but they're guilty, and we all know that happens all the time. So, I mean, it's just so alarming, and I thought I would do a little show here. And so the title of the show, Biden flouts law as only murderers and rapists are denied entry, and also Biden seeking to return another million deported back to America, and overall, under a tsunami of illegals, where is the relief? What's going to happen to America? And they want to, by the way, they want to give 5 million illegals in America citizenship in the middle of this so-called, what's it called? Infrastructure bill. I mean, the infrastructure bill has got more different topics in it than the Encyclopedia Americana World, what was the name of that encyclopedia I had as a kid? The World Encyclopedia. So, you know, Kamala was flying somewhere, I think supposed to be flying to the Central America. They had to stop and turn around, and they said there was a technical difficulty. I think the technical difficulty was, you want to know? I think the toilet was full, because it couldn't handle all the BS. So they had to turn around and empty it out and probably put another toilet in there. So what happened when Biden got into office? The first thing that he did was cancel all of the programs that Trump had. Because, you know, Trump was evil. He's 1,000% evil. Therefore, anything he did, even if it looked good, was a terrible idea. So they canceled the border programs, and we had the Stay in Mexico program, and we'd gotten rid of catch and release. The border apprehensions were down. The number of people passing into America without being caught was down. And we were getting to the point where we could develop some real policies. As soon as Biden gets in there, he just kind of, you know, can you imagine this? If you had been put in charge of your dad's farm, and you decided that animal pens were cruel. They kept the animals from going where they wanted to and feeding the way that they would like to, and milling and mixing around with the other animals. And so you decided that you'd tell your assistants, I want all of these pens removed, and just let the animals go, and anywhere they go, anything that they do is what they want to do, is what they should do. Now, what would be the result of that? Well, that's exactly what's happening on the border, but it's not animals, it's people, of course, but it's also people who are criminals are being let into the country. And, you know, they say that the people, most of the people, 2/3 of the people coming over the border are from the Golden Triangle down south. Pardon me, Northern Triangle. I think the Golden Triangle is in Thailand. Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. 3 countries in Central America that battle poverty, gang violence, and corruption. And those are the people that we're letting in. So probably not highly educated if they're battling poverty. I'm just guessing. So why do we have a border crisis? Why did Biden cancel all of those programs? Well, he had an excuse because they had demonized Trump. And anything that Trump did was bad by definition. It's like Satan. You know, Satan doesn't have a lot of some book that says the good works of the devil. Well, number one, those programs were canceled because they were Trump's. But number two, they wanted to let a lot more people in the country. How do we know this? Well, they've recently made an announcement that they want to bring back 1 million people that were denied access to America so that they could get a second shot. So we're getting millions of people a year illegally over the border, and it's just causing a lot of chaos. It's so bad that Biden and Kamala won't actually go down to the border because they wouldn't take the risk of getting a picture down there. So the idea from the left, from the Democrats, is that what they do is good because they do it, and they're smart. Republicans are stupid. They're educated. They go to the Ivy League. Everybody else is kind of a few steps behind them. So everything they do is good. And that doesn't really seem to be working out. So it was predictable what would happen. Now, what did happen? What are we talking in numbers? Well, he's only been in office a few months. But in March, there was 172,000 who crossed the southwest border, and 20,000 were unaccompanied minors. Now, get this, I looked it up and was able to track down how many people the Border Patrol believes are crossing the border each day who were not apprehended, and that's another 1,000. So you have to put another 30,000 on this. So you're getting 200,000 people over the border a month. And now they think the Department of Homeland Security estimates that 15 to 25% of the people illegally crossing are COVID-19 positive. So that is a huge story. Now, this is even worse. They made this big deal about how they were dealing with, they were addressing all of these kids in these cages wrapped up like potatoes, wrapped up in aluminum like potatoes, these little aluminum blankets, and stacked really on top of one another. They've decided the Biden administration, obviously without asking anybody, have decided to start dropping all of these people that cross the border off in smaller towns. Now, the good news for them is that there's not really a record of this. There's no real, the way that the publishing industry has fallen apart. A lot of these towns are not going to have newspapers, but the media doesn't want to cover this anyway. But they're across America, they're dropping people off, illegal people off. And the sad thing is that these little towns don't have the means to take care of them. So that's almost begging for crime right there, isn't it? Well, I want to address a few things here. Liberal response, conservative response, liberal Christian response, criminal issues, and Biden's history of fraud and why I think that's important. Now, let me get to a few more statistics here. The March numbers show a 71% increase in migrant crossings. Can you believe that? I mean, that's astounding. So 570,000 migrants have been apprehended during the first 3 months of this year. Now, in 2020, all of 2020, there were 458,000, about 460,000 migrants crossed into the U.S. So 3 months in, we're 100,000 more than than we were, and you also have to think about, you have to add in 30,000 more per each month for the 570,000. You've got to add in 90,000 more, so that's 660,000, because those are people that are sneaking in that are not caught. Now, child abuse. Over a third of the girls are being sexually assaulted or raped along the journey, and that is a problem. Now, here's one more fact you might find interesting. On the U.S.-Mexico border, 170, or as I said, 200,000 were apprehended in the ports of entry. The U.S. border, people who came across through the ports of entry to declare that they wanted to come in here was only 4,136, if you can believe that. All right, so let's get into the liberal response, and you know what it is. We should be sympathetic. We should be merciful. These people are coming. They're victims. They're impoverished. There's gangs. There's a lot of crime. We, as the great Christian nation or the great charitable nation, need to bring them in, as many as possible. And we're living through that right now. And it's wrong to deny anybody. Now, the conservative response is, let's be careful because we don't know who these people are. Most of them are not getting given, or we were told anyway, that the majority of them are not being given paperwork to go to court. But we know already that about 95% of people don't go to their court hearings anyway. Now, last year, or I believe it was in 2019, 700,000 people were in here on visas, and 600,000 of them didn't return home to the South. And so that's another big source of people coming in or staying. So the conservative response is, let's be careful, let's do it legally, let's do it organized, let's treat these people well. We don't want them so excited to get up here that they give their kids to strangers, and then the kids are killed, they're left, they're abandoned. And the girls are, obviously, these coyotes are men, and so they do rape a lot of these women. It doesn't seem to bother the liberals at all. Liberal Christian response. Okay, I had this interesting experience with a pastor that I know, and he told me that most of the people who are trying to cross the border are Christians, like born-again Christians. I'd never heard that before. And then I said, well, even if that's true, aren't they breaking the law? And he said, well, the law is so ill enforced that it doesn't really matter. And I said, well, are you saying law doesn't matter? And he said, in this case, it really doesn't, and that the Christians in America should be dying to help these people. And then he told me that the people who don't want them, the conservatives basically, who don't want them to come in, and some of them are liberals too, that are just not happy with the idea. He told me that the people who didn't want them to come across the border were racists, which my jaw hit the floor, But what are we going to do with all of these new criminals that are showing up? I mean, aren't you concerned about that? Okay, so this is what I found, and this is from Cato, which is it's libertarian, basically. It's not a Christian center, but it's libertarian. Now, they did research on crimes by illegals and found that, you're not going to believe this, out of the 50 states that they did a Freedom of Information Act on, a FOIA, the only state that collects research or statistics based on legal status is Texas. So 49 out of 50 are missing out on a lot of information. So they put a working paper together, and it's published by Oxford University in 2021, and they took data collected by Texas Department of Public Safety, and it records and keeps immigration statuses of those arrested and convicted of crimes in Texas. So this is what they found. In 2018, the illegal immigrant criminal conviction rate was 782 per 100,000 illegal immigrants, 535 per 100,000 legal immigrants. And the illegal immigrant criminal conviction rate was 45% below that of native-born Americans. In Texas, the general pattern of native-born Americans having the highest criminal conviction rates, followed by illegal immigrants, and then with legal immigrants. So that's an argument for having people be legal. So here is something, though, from the Heritage organization. And this is from Hans von Spakovsky, who is he's a lawyer. Non-citizens accounted for 24% of all federal drug arrests, 25% of all federal property arrests, and 28% of all federal fraud arrests. In 2018, a quarter of all federal drug arrests took place in the 5 judicial districts along the U.S.-Mexican border. All right, so let's get down to some other facts. Opponents of federal efforts to enforce the immigration laws enacted by Congress repeatedly claim that illegal immigrants are, quote, less likely to commit crimes than U.S. citizens and thus represent no threat to public safety. But that's not true when it comes to federal crimes. So this Texas statistics were the Texas laws. Non-citizens constitute only 7% of the U.S. population, but the latest data from the Justice Department Bureau of Justice Statistics reveal that non-citizens accounted for nearly two-thirds, 64% of all federal arrests in 2018. Yet 2 decades earlier, only 37% of all federal arrests were non-citizens. These arrests, by the way, are not just for immigration crimes. Non-citizens accounted for, as I already mentioned, 24% of federal drug arrests, 25% of federal property arrests, 28% of all federal fraud arrests. So, it is a problem, but I've got another part of this fear that if these people are let in and they could have any conviction except murder and rape, think of all of the different types of fraud and assault and what about pedophiles? They don't stop pedophiles at the border? I mean, it's absolutely crazy what's going on. Now, my last... Oh, and by the way, don't forget that the cartels are making $500 million a month. You can't get to the border unless you go through the cartels because the cartels have control of the border inside of Mexico. So you have to have a coyote to bring you to the border, and it's something like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 that these people have to pay to be taken to the border. So we are directly or indirectly funding a mafia that is so much more powerful than any mafia in the United States, and Biden doesn't care. Now, why doesn't he care? I've got one more question for you. Joe Biden was linked to his son, and his son, through his computer and through a lot of different things, has been accused of, and with a great deal of evidence, of being connected to these different countries. So you got Russia, you got China, you got the Ukraine, obviously, but other places too. And the question is, number one, do they hold this over Joe Biden? Is that the reason that Joe Biden didn't want to go after the Wuhan labs? And by the way, did you know the Wuhan lab that everybody thought was the number one virus lab in the world was built by the French, and as soon as it was done, they were kicked out? That's what China does. So is that why Biden's gone soft on China? And because of the $3.5 million that was given to Hunter Biden, is that why, and they can blackmail them, the Biden family? That's why they did the Nord 2. They allowed their pipelines. Supposedly pipelines are so terrible that we had to shut down all our pipelines. But they opened the pipeline for Russia. Isn't that crazy? So it's not about global warming. And but they also shut down Anwar. They also shut down the any permits out of Anwar up in Alaska. So they've shut down Keystone. They shut down Anwar. They shut down a whole lot of federal permits as the first days that Biden got into office, and they shut down the Colonial Pipeline through the fraudsters from Russia, and they are trying to shut down L5, which brings 500,000 barrels a day between Michigan and Canada. So, what is going on at the border is absolutely crazy, and we've got to stand up for it. We have to, as principled conservatives. And if you're not a conservative, let me just say that the history of America was conservative originally. And that's why we were so successful. And now illegal border crossings are 6 times higher what even Obama said was a crisis. So what are all these people going to do when they get into the country? Where are they going to go? They're dropped off in small towns. There's no support for them. There's no welfare. Are they going to just sit around and starve to death? No. They're going to go into people's houses and grab stuff, or they're going to migrate to cities. But or maybe they'll just show up in church. But, if you bring in hundreds of thousands of people each month, that's 2 million a year, more than 2 million a year. And now you're going to bring 1 million back. So Biden is doing this for the party because they know they're going to lose this coming election, and they've got to find a way to buy their way out of jail. So that's my theory. I'm sticking with it. Kelly OConnell, thank you so much. It was wonderful to hang out with you. Just fabulous. Would you subscribe to my channel? And I will see you again tomorrow. Ciao.